One of the questions I really like to ask our clients is how do you want to lead or how do you choose to lead?
Welcome to Opportunity Minded, a series for enterprise leaders, corporate strategists, and forward thinkers like you who want to drive business growth. Each episode focuses on a distinct strategic approach to help you unlock opportunities with actionable insights. I'm your host, Jessica, a producer at Euromonitor International, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by Brianna McCarr, who helps our clients with their custom innovation and product strategies, Miri Eliyahu, one of our product attribute experts, and Mike Fergus, who heads up our marketing claims solution. Today, we'll be talking about the importance of data-driven product positioning and marketing claims to differentiate in crowded markets, drive growth, and establish credibility. I want to start off by making the clear distinction between these two related topics. So, could you give us an intro into product positioning?
When we're talking about positioning, we're ultimately talking about attributes. So things inside a product or things external to a product that you might see on the label that convey kind of the USPs, the benefits of the product. So we also see things and attributes like flavor, fragrance, packaging, even product format. So when we think about what are the needs behind product attributes, we're really thinking about what is a product offering and how does a company derive opportunity and growth for what they're putting in terms of communication to shoppers and customers. So, in our space, a lot of CPG brands that we work with have also called these things like demand spaces, need states, innovation territories. And really, it's just thinking about what's pulling off of a product. So, I think some easy examples would be words like hydrating, things like gluten-free and snacks, fast absorbing and maybe a more type of skin product or something like that. So kind of what does all that encompass and how do you position the right product encompassing all of those attributes?
What makes the selection of product attributes so important?
Product attributes can be driven from their ingredients, from their functionalities, simply from being trendy on social media. And a certain product can have actually maybe 10 claims that they can make, 10 attributes that they can use. It doesn't mean that they should use all of them. A lot of times it's about selecting the right attributes that you want to promote, making sure they work together. And sometimes the best way would actually to eliminate attributes, to not use them. One of the best examples is Oreos, which are technically vegan, do not have a vegan label. And that is a very smart move on their part because they don't want to be a vegan product. Everyone loves Oreos, everyone eats them. They just happen to be vegan, right? And so choosing the right attributes is not just about what I want to show, it's also about who I want to speak to, who's my target audience.
Absolutely. And I think that's like very key way to think about these is what does your targeted consumer understand and value with that product? A lot of our clients come to us because they need help understanding this dynamic. And so kind of this idea of a very data-driven approach to this process where we look at the SKU level to see what is a particular SKU doing in product positioning and then ultimately using revenue and market data to back that up.
So now, Mike, what is a marketing claim as opposed to these product positionings?
Yeah, a marketing claim is a short and simple, but very impactful and measurable statement that could be owned by a brand or company and comes with third party validation. So you know it's true and not just puffery. So, a few of the examples of the type of claims that Euromonitor has validated are things like best selling dog food brand online or world's number one skincare brand. So the biggest difference between a third party validated marketing claim from a group like Euromonitor is, and something that's just generic positioning on a claim, is, the attestation from a third party. And it's not just a statement, but it's a distinction about where you are. So, if you're a natural product in the food space, anyone with that qualification could say that they're a natural product, but not every brand that's on a store shelf could say that they're the best-selling natural product in that category. So these claims are something that resonate very quickly with consumers, and they're objective and measurable instead of just something that's fanciful or simply a little bit informative. And they're not vague like best or beloved or, America's favorite choice.
Where would you see these marketing claims? How could a brand use them?
Yeah, our partners use their claims all over. They use it in traditional advertising. We've been in TV ads, billboards, airports, baseball stadiums. Some partners like to use the claims in investor documents to boast about their performance and position in the market compared to peers. I know several clients like to use it as a recruitment tool. People want to work for the biggest, best brands in the world. And then also, most importantly, it's often used on pack or in store displays where, we're seeing retailers want brands to do more consumer education, including in store. So having that very short narrative about what sets your product above and beyond and distinct from everyone else that's on the shelves is a huge use case. And finally, our partners that use our claim service are always thinking of a new way or new space to put this, whether it's a train station or social media or I don't know what will be next, but it's really exciting.
The options are endless. All right. Well, I'd like to start off by first digging into product positioning a little bit more. So, Mike, we'll see you later. Brianna and Miri, let's say that there is a brand, they're experiencing stagnant growth. They aren't able to reformulate their products necessarily at this time, but they suspect that they need to rethink how they're positioning their existing product. They're overwhelmed by which claims or ingredients matter. So, how could this brand use product positioning or product claims to move forward?
I think this is a question we hear a lot from clients. Ultimately, we know that clients a lot of times are thinking about innovation in terms of slight tweaks they can make to existing product lines, kind of what we would call renovation, versus coming up with something entirely new and disruptive that requires a lot of time and investment. They're really thinking about how do I make those little changes that can have big impact. And I think that's where positioning is a huge value for clients to think about. How do they identify attribute trends? Euromonitor uses our existing database of SKUs and their categories. And then we pair that attribute data with revenue. This really provides a powerful strategy that clients can act on because they might have a hypothesis. We think it's protein, but is it protein plus energy? Is it protein plus, fuel or right what's the right combination? And sometimes we see that risks are taken and they're not, being based in any data or evidence or consumer need. Positioning really allows us to use data to back and kind of either confirm new opportunities, confirm hypotheses, or reject current status quo and provide recommendations for what will hit and drive that growth.
And this is why it's really important to look at attributes from a myriad of perspectives. In many cases, categories will dictate which are your table stakes claims, where you have to have a certain claim even if you don't want to. If you are now creating a snack bar, and that snack bar is supposed to be a breakfast bar, an energy bar, it cannot go on without a fiber claim or a protein claim. It simply can't, even if it brings you no value in terms of pricing. A lot of categories are experiencing rapid evolution and they're being diffused with other categories. So, just because of that, we find new uses to products. And with these new uses, come new claims. Beauty and personal care have always used peptides. It's a common ingredient, but recently it has been linked to longevity claims. This is a new claim, but if your product already has peptides, why not use that claim, right? You don't have to formulate. You just need to find the trend that's going on. You need to look at the consumer values. Where are consumer loyalties shifting? If we look at the plant-based food industry, they started off with animal right claims and then they moved to sustainability. That's where they had the big push. right? Sustainability is more digestible than animal rights. You need to look at your competitors. What are they doing? What's already an established claim? How can you use something similar or different? If everyone's using a protein claim, should I use a fiber claim to distinct myself? Um, what kind of claims can I take from a different category? So we're now seeing a diffusion of nootropic claims that have really dominated consumer health. But now we're seeing them to start to appear in soft drinks, in snacks, in hot drinks, even in beauty and personal care. These are kind of sister industries. It's easy to apply the same ingredients. Sometimes they already have existing ingredients, and now they're just borrowing those claims. And it is really helpful to use robust data sets where you can actually track those changes over time, like we use.
And I think that's such a good point, Mary, because a lot of times, people want to innovate in their claims. They don't, they want to stand out, they want to be different from competition. And I think you bring up a great point is when you can look at a data set that maybe looks at adjacent spaces, to kind of see rises and declines, successes and failures, and think about, gosh, like we already have that ingredient in our formulation. Or, we're also trying to go after someone who has a more athletic lifestyle, maybe we should be looking at supplements and how their packages look like so that they're integrated into some of those other products that our target consumer is using. And I think there's a lot of power in identifying kind of that white space within your own, I would say, near to competitive set. And so when you can cast a wide net, whether it be category, industry, even market is in countries, that's where we see a lot of inspiration for products to position themselves, to stand out on shelf, be more creative, not just be one that's claiming all of the same things, but ultimately claiming valuable things that are different.
Yeah. And even the same claim can look different across industries. The meaning of hydrating is completely different in soft drinks, in consumer health, in beauty and personal care. And even though they're using the same names, the customers know it's a different meaning. So you have to really be careful with when you borrow these claims, because when we're talking hydration and consumer health, we're talking about powders with electrolytes. When we're talking hydration and beauty and personal care, we're talking about moisturizers.
Everybody would love a magic claim or benefit that was scalable and that worked in every category in every country. We see there's some claims that have different meanings in different markets with different age groups. We see things like vitamin C is synonymous with immunity in some place like the US, but in Asian countries, it's just an ingredient. It doesn't convey the same functionality or benefit there in the immunity space. So, I think where we always try to grab our clients is like, let's think about who, let's think about what they're doing, what are their local customs, what do the words mean to that consumer? Because it's really, we mentioned it before, it's just not a one size fits all type of approach to a product.
And it also matters on who is your target audience, because not everyone wants to capture the masses, especially if you have an emerging product or an emerging claim. You want to capture 10 or 15% of the market. Not everyone is, the big players that want to capture all. And this is why we also need to look at the adoption curve of these claims. If we're telling someone this is an emerging claim, they're going to get a great price premium for it, but only 15% of the market will probably be their clients, right? Because that price premium limits your audience. If you want to go for the mass market, you need to have a claim that's already popularized, that's kind of like our table stakes already, but you might not get a price premium for it, right? Organic in the US is huge. It's over 80% penetration in certain categories, right? We go to our veggie and fruit aisle, we go to the produce aisle, everything has an organic section. If we go to the processed, frozen processed aisle, almost nothing has an organic claim, right? Because consumers care about it in produce, not necessarily in the frozen aisle. And the same thing will happen with different countries. In Mexico, organic has such a lower penetration compared to the US. So if we're looking at that claim in Mexico, they probably have a higher price premium compared to the US because not all the market adopted it yet.
And I think that's important to think about claims that are maybe overused, that aren't specific enough, using something like an organic or a natural, because so many brands are using it. Does that even hold weight for a consumer? And what does something like natural actually mean in terms of a benefit? So I think that's kind of another layer here is considering what's heavily saturated in the market, and what does the consumer understand or accept. So it's great if you find a wild ingredient that you can bring to front of pack and you think it's going to be a wow factor. But I think even beyond price point and target audience, if there's a huge learning curve or a level of education there, I just don't know that that's a workable claim for any company or product on shelf.
Definitely. If you're introducing an emerging claim, you have to do the consumer education work. I'm going to give a weird example, but we're currently working on um, prebiotic and probiotic claims, and now emerging in the market are postbiotic claims and symbiotic claims. Do consumers know what symbiotic and postbiotic are? We as experts know. I understand what postbiotic means because I'm in that industry, but the consumer that's going to look at a yogurt and they're used to looking at it and saying, "Oh, probiotic or prebiotic yogurt." Whoever adopts those claims will have to become the face of those claims initially until they're popularized. The first protein claims weren't that popular. Now everything has to be protein. And even if we look at digestive health claims, gut health and gut biome used to be very niche. Now we see it everywhere. So we do see them popularized, but it is about consumer education.
I'm wondering, what is the biggest risk that brands should be aware of?
Hmm. Regulatory compliance.
Yeah.
You do not want to get a warning letter from your regulator. In the US, it would be an FDA warning letter. The EU has their own governing board. Every country has one. You want to make sure that if you claim a certain claim, you are legally allowed to make that claim. Um, in some countries, for instance, you cannot say the word enhance in a claim. You can only say support. So I can say gut health support. I can say cognitive support. I can never say cognitive enhancement. Um, and it's also about doing due diligence to make sure that you don't pick up on a claim that's dying out already. And some brands do that, and then they're like, "We invested so much, front of pack, description, nothing comes out of it." So legal consequences and irrelevance are very important here.
Well, now that we understand why product claims can't be chosen at random, I want to do exactly that. So I've created a game called Claim to Fame Product Positioning. In this game, there will be 3 spinners that select at random 1 product category and 2 product attributes. Your jobs will be to tell me if you think that random combo could be a successful product position or not, and why. You'll be playing as a team, so you win by just being here. So, hey, congratulations, you've already won. Let's get into it. First up, we have laundry care, high fiber, and vegan. What are your thoughts?
That actually can work, and I will explain why.
Okay, great.
High fiber and laundry care relates to a certain amount of thread count and
Oh,
certain fibers and sheets. And so we do have detergents for that. And we also have vegan detergents for people who don't want to have, you know, basically all detergents are essentially vegan. But vegan stands for like not tested on animals sometimes. So
hmm,
that can actually work. That
okay.
can actually be a good claim for that market.
That's such a good
See?
example of
Out of
how
box
these
thinking.
how these attributes can mean something completely different across different categories. I would never think that high fiber would exist outside of a food category. Hmm.
Fiber count matters.
Oh,
I
I
was
know.
just thinking food.
All right, let's do one more. All right, bottled water, plant-based brain health.
That is very easy. That is
Yeah.
very easy. Yes, you actually, this is my piece that was published actually today, talks about nootropic claims and how they go into soft drinks. So you get bottled water. It's already plant-based. It's water. And you just add a nootropic component to it, and you have your brain health claim. And this is actually a trending area in terms of new product activity for soft drinks right now.
Excellent. Well, that turned out perfectly, and
Okay.
we'll put a link to that piece in the video. As I said earlier, you already won, which means you didn't even have to play that game, and I've successfully tricked you both. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'll try to trick Mike into playing the game. But either way, he will tell us more about marketing claims and why they could be number one for your brand.
You've got an idea that could be a game changer for your business. But wait, have you asked the right questions? Passport is the knowledge vault and insight tool you need to find evidence to support your ideas. What are your competitors doing? How well do you know your customers? Which trends might you be missing out on? Where are the growth opportunities? Your idea could be the breakthrough that steers your business in a whole new direction. Bring it to the table with confidence, knowing you've got Euromonitor's Passport to back it up. More than 5,000 organizations, big and small, leverage our 50+ years of intelligence and insight to answer their biggest questions. Are you ready to join them?
Welcome back, and hello again to Mike. To remind us all what marketing claims are, I wanted to play another game, but I'm not that inventive. So we're playing the exact same game, and this time I'm calling it Claim to Fame Marketing Claims. In this game, there will be 3 spinners that select at random 1 statement of leadership, 1 category, and 1 statement of scope. Your job will be to tell me if you think that random combo could be a successful marketing claim or not, and why. Are you ready?
Good. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's see what comes up.
All right. Biggest breakfast for kids.
Ooh. All right. That is an interesting one. Are you trying to say you're the biggest breakfast for kid in terms of having the largest amount for sales? Or are you trying to assert that you're leading the category by saying like your product is literally the biggest serving of a breakfast for a kid? So breakfast is definitely a category of something we could measure and define. And then for kids is definitely, slicing the category into a specific niche or subcategory, which is a great way to make use of attributes and, identifying what your unique selling points are. So this is definitely something new to me, but definitely something that could be done.
There might be somebody out there waiting for this claim right now. All right. Yeah.
So we could definitely do best-selling caterer. We've actually done some claims around the world for the caterers. I think most of the ones we've done are in Southeast Asia. And being the number 1 catering company by value sales and the turnover in that space. The since sliced bread,
Yeah.
that is an interesting one where if we did that, we would take it very literally and be like, when was sliced bread invented? We also are very specific about what time ranges we're validating when we assert something about data. So chances are the time range of measuring all caterers going back to 1400 when sliced bread was first invented might be a little bit outside of our research scope.
But you're saying there's a chance.
Yes.
Thank you so much for playing. That was so informative. You also won, but just for being the only player in this game. Now, let's say a brand really wants to make a claim in their category. They want to uniquely position themselves. How do they do that?
One of the questions I really like to ask our clients is, how do you want to lead, or how do you choose to lead? So we found a lot of brands that we help them find and we help them find and refine and validate their position within a niche or subcategory or by feature or function. And we back that with our intelligence. So the types of claims we can make off of that are the most common ones we make our market leadership by value or volume sales. So, number one best selling product, or, some of the more interesting ones we've done is number one reverse mortgage company in Japan, or like I said before, world's best selling brand of dog food online. And then you continue to get into more niches or splits like that, like number one selling organic dog food brand online or fresh dog food brand online. And then other claims, we do claims about being the first or only brand with certain distinctions. So, for example, the only rice based dairy alternative in South Korea. Or we've done claims about being the first smartphone camera with a certain resolution. And then finally, we've also done things looking at unique business attributes about the company or how the product is made. So we've done things like, number one beauty product from a direct seller, or number one by number of retail outlets in a channel, and other things like looking at vitamin production and asserting that this type of vitamin is the only one made by a company that's completely vertically integrated, from manufacturer to research and development to the labs to distribution, etc. Um, so really, it's, we want to help you surface what's your unique position in the market, and is there a measurable way to demonstrate that to consumers.
So that we are not all trying to claim world's best coffee, can you tell us what makes a claim trustworthy? Why do we believe a claim?
Yeah. It needs to be measurable and objective. Each one of our claims comes with a footnote stating by exactly what dimensions we're making an assertion that you're number one or the leader or the first or only. And then second, the fact that Euromonitor is your partner in this, coming with third party validation rather than just a company or brand's marketing team trying to, assert how wonderful their product is. They're saying we have gone out and got attestation from an independent party that specializes this, and Euromonitor's putting their name and reputation behind this claim to say, yes, this is true. At the end of the day, claims should be clear and easy to understand. The more caveated or nuanced something is, the more hard it is to convey and communicate. Also means it's going to be harder to defend, and it also probably means it's not going to be resonating with consumers. So we filter out a lot of things and do a lot of things to refine the language so that it makes sense, it's simple, and ideally effective. And talking about caveats and exceptions, if you feel you really need to kind of cherry pick your way in terms of attributes or exceptions or geographies to assert a claim, then it's probably not something that's going to um, make sense to the consumer. And that applies to us defining what the claim is and what we want to put into the public domain with you. And it also applies to some of the internal checks we do about the methods and sources we use to validating them. We want this information to make sense to other people. We want it to be trustworthy information. We want to follow industry standards and best practices. And it's just kind of alignment across all of these factors that, you know, at the end of the day, what gets presented to the consumer is impactful and trustworthy.
Beyond, just being trustworthy, why else should brands use marketing claims?
Trust and the claim is a great way to build brand equity. Uh, it is a self-contained story that you've achieved this feat of being the first leader or pioneer to implement a certain feature or function for a product, or the ability just to lead the market in sales. That right there is a clear narrative, and it helps stand you apart on a shelf where, as a consumer, I might know I already want something that's low carb and organic. And then I walk into a grocery shelf and there's a dozen products that meet this description. But if one of them could filter themselves out from the rest and say that they're the number one selling product with those features, that helps relieve a lot of burden on me as a consumer. And I know, sometimes when I'm on Amazon.com for certain product categories, if something says it's the number one selling product on Amazon, that instills a lot of confidence in me about the brand and the product. Um, and then, yeah, it demonstrates that you're a leader, either in terms of your ability to sell or your ability to innovate. And help stands you out. And at the end of the day, this is a commercial decision by businesses that come to us for our claims. And ideally, this is going to be boosting your revenue. So, one client who gave us a brief testimonial said they added a sales leadership claim from us to their live streams, and they saw the revenue nearly double from those live streams. So, we talk about what might seem qualitative things like trust or brand equity. But at the end of the day, hopefully this is something that's going to be driving, uh, you know, bottom line increases for companies that choose to partner with us.
And I imagine that some of those opportunities might be coming from opening doors into new retailers or new markets with claims.
Yeah, there's several ways that companies use our claims to get into new markets or develop new relationships with partners. With new markets, one of the things we've seen is common or frequent is brands will choose to demonstrate their leadership in one country as a sign of strength when entering a new market. So, traditionally, something that this was very common, and one of the first things I noticed people doing it for was European and North American dairy brands in China, where by being able to say you're the number one brand in Europe, that develops a high sense of trust that this is a quality, safe product, etc. And again, besides just having the leadership trust, it's the regional trust and the sourcing trust. So we see this for European brands, we see this for North American brands, in Southeast Asia, we see Japanese brands leveraged for this purpose. And then also, besides the geographic scope of penetrating a new market, it can be used to penetrate adjacent categories or new categories to build campaigns for a new launch. So, an example could be if you're number one in power saws in the US and you're launching your first drill, then you could attach a claim to that, sort of something like this drill is from the number one saw maker in America. So you may not have built up your reputation or your innovative capabilities in the drill making field yet, but you could demonstrate your competence and achievements elsewhere in something related to help enter that market with some momentum and a sense of confidence with consumers. And then for retailers, they're expecting their partners to help educate consumers more, and they're expecting them to do this also while consumers are in store, whether it's on pack or with displays or other mechanisms. So attaching a claim to a product is one of the most efficient ways to just build a clear and ready narrative for consumers to quickly digest. If you have a long story about different features or functions or how your product is made, maybe that messaging will get lost at me. Maybe I won't understand it when I'm browsing shelves. But for something clear like, hey, we're the number one selling brand, that's a great reason to articulate why your product should be on a retailer's shelf.
Are there risks to saying, I am, we're the best brand in the universe?
There's risks of making an unverified claim, like legal consequences or lawsuits, whether it's from a competitor, a regulator, a consumer, or, you know, a lot of things are just not knowing what the known variables are. And then also in some markets like China and Brazil, footnotes and attribution to a research firm are illegally required. So you're already skirting the law if you choose to try to make one of these assertions on your own. So these verification measures are there to protect you, the brand, while making these claims by having, a clear measurement with evidence linked to what the assertion is, We want defensible definitions, defensible language, defensible research behind it, and we avoid exaggeration or ambiguous claims.
So, we've talked through today how positioning brings clarity to what your product stands for and how the right claims, especially when they're grounded in real data, drive growth and establish brand credibility. Before you go, if you could give one piece of advice to a company trying to improve their product positioning, what would it be?
Yeah, I think simple, just be authentic with what your product can do and clear about who it's for.
Make sure that the claim you choose has the same target audience as the product you're making. Otherwise, you're just missing out.
And for me, just how do you pierce through the noise in one sentence?
Thank you to tuning in to this episode of Opportunity Minded, brought to you by Euromonitor International, the first destination for organizations seeking growth. A big thank you to our guests. Stay connected with us on social media or visit our website to explore more resources and join our community. Until next time, stay opportunity minded.
Well, we're not going to say number one in the universe because we don't know. Like, I'm not going to sit here debating whether there's little green men making, best-selling catering companies on other planets.